Hello and welcome to the channel where I review one book at a time by giving you a spoiler-free review first and a deeper discussion right after. My name is Jennifer and we will be discussing Sex Life by B.B. Easton today. Book review. Before I get into the book review, I do want to give a disclaimer. Although this is a biography, it is full of explicit content, and this video is meant for mature audiences only. With that said, if you are a minor and still somehow manage to access this video, you're not kicked out, but I do hope that you are safe and healthy and that you learned something from the video. Sex Life, or 44 Chapters About 4 Men by B.B. Easton. It's a biography, but the reason why I read it was because of the Netflix show. There is a show on Netflix that goes just by Sex Life, and I watched it with my husband, and we were so stressed out and heated and just tortured by watching all 8 episodes of the series that I felt like I needed to read the book. Because I needed answers, I needed some kind of justification as to why the show exists. It was really bad. So, I am going to do a rare spoiler summary of the Netflix show because one, I don't think it's worth watching. I think all the hype came from the gratuitous amount of sex and nudity and also just how hate-watchable it is. Like, you hate it, but you can't stop watching because it's such a mess, such a dumpster fire, that you feel compelled to know how it all ends. And I will tell you that the ending of the show was the worst part of it all, but we'll get there. And second of all, I want to give better context to the book because I will compare and contrast the book and the show quite a bit. So here we go. All you need to know about Sex Life, the Netflix show, SparkNotes edition. Billy is a happily married mother of 2. She has a toddler and a newborn, and although she's happy to be a stay-at-home mom, she has postpartum depression and she's clearly missing passion and excitement in her life. The show focuses on her discontentment with her husband Cooper because he's rich and gorgeous but lacks intimacy and any sex drive. In the first episode alone, there's a sex scene depicting her coming onto her husband only to get shot down and deprived of her needs. So her solution is to write about her extremely sexual past with her ex-boyfriend Brad in a diary to vent her frustrations. Unfortunately, her husband accidentally finds it, but he doesn't confront her about it. Instead, he tries to copy everything he reads to give her the excitement and passion his wife's been missing. So this is where the book and the show diverge. The whole gimmick of the book that got put into a show is that the mom, Billy, or BB in the book's case, writes about her extremely sexual past that she kept hidden from her husband, and the husband finds out about the diary and reads it. But from here on, the book and the show are completely different. So in the show, Billy writes about her ex-boyfriend Brad, who is hot, extremely rich, cool, everything that you don't want your ex-boyfriend to be, basically. So I was gonna attempt to give you guys a play-by-play of each episode, but for the sake of my mental and emotional health, I realized that I just can't do it. There's just too much nonsense that goes on, and there is another channel, her name is Amanda the Jedi, who did a really good video summary of the entire series for people who don't want to put themselves through 8 episodes of the nonsense that is Sex Life, the Netflix show. So I will leave a link for that somewhere. So go ahead and watch that video if you want a more detailed summary. I'm gonna give the short version. So all you need to know is that Cooper continues to read Billy's diary as she continues to write about how much she misses her intensely carnal relationship with her ex-boyfriend. But instead of talking about it, Cooper and Billy dance around the issue because Cooper has no sex drive and feels insecure compared to the memory of Brad, and Billy is also dishonest with herself and her husband. Things get even worse when Billy takes a surprise trip to her best friend Sasha's house, only to find out that she's been hooking up with Brad for 2 years. After not seeing or speaking to each other for 8 years, Brad suddenly decides he wants Billy back and relentlessly pursues her even though she's already married with kids. Lots of insane and toxic things happen. Both Billy and Cooper end up cheating on each other in different ways, but in the end, Brad can't convince Billy to leave her husband. She fixes her relationship with Cooper, and they seem to be content for a while, until in the last few minutes of the season finale, Billy decides that she's unhappy after all, runs away from Cooper at their son's musical, and shows up at Brad's penthouse to say she wants to sleep with him after all. But she's also still not going to leave her husband, and that is how the show ends. Oh my gosh. So the show is a mess, and I just want to break it down a little bit further. Billy's diary, that's secretly a manual for her husband, does not fix anything in the show, because the problem isn't the sex life in her marriage, the problem is with her. So I broke it down a little bit as to what her problems were. One, she didn't talk to her husband about her extremely sexual past. Part of that was because when Billy and Cooper get together in the show, she just broke up with Brad, and it was a very, very hard breakup for her. So she was still getting over him, and also she didn't want to scare Cooper away because he seemed like such a perfect guy that she wanted to hold on to him at all costs. Those are her reasons, but that's still not excusable for not telling your husband the truth or more about yourself before you guys get married. Ladies, I am telling you, there is so much that you guys need to talk about before you get married. So my husband and I have been married for 2 years. Even to the day before the wedding, we were still trying to tell each other as much as possible. There is no limit to how much you can disclose, because the more you know and understand each other, the better informed your decision to commit will be, and that will only serve to strengthen your relationship. If you cannot talk to your husband about something, there is something seriously wrong with that, because that's your partner. You need to be able to speak about pretty much anything. So that's already a huge problem. Second of all, she's not just lying to Cooper. Billy is also continuously lying to herself, convince herself that everything's gonna be okay. It's alright, I will just get over it. It's okay if I'm unhappy or missing just a little bit of passion and excitement in life, when clearly that's not true, because her discontentment and unhappiness and depression is manifesting itself in very toxic behaviors. 3, this woman is supposed to be a school psychologist, and she's supposed to have multiple degrees in psychology. Before she got married to Cooper, she was actually working on her doctorate degree. This woman is supposed to be very smart and very educated, but everything she says and does feels like to the contrary of that. And I don't know, I just hold her to a higher standard because I have 2 degrees, one in music education, which is my primary passion, but I also got a 2nd degree in psychology because I wanted to supplement my education degree. So I know some of the curriculum that Billy should have studied. Someone that educated in human psychology should have the sense to understand that 1, they're not okay, 2, they need to communicate about it, and 3, they need help. Billy really should have gotten therapy for herself and couples counseling for her and her husband. And going off the psychology thing, this woman is a published author in a peer-reviewed psychology journal. So if you don't know anything about academia, that is a huge deal. So not only is she a published author, the article that she has published is about monogamy. That blows my mind because most of the toxicity and nonsense that goes on in the show is about how Billy is constantly dealing with her desire to be unfaithful to Cooper. Lastly, a big theme in the show is how Cooper gives her 85% of what she wants in life in a relationship, and Brad gives her that missing 15%. In the last few episodes of the show, when Billy and Cooper are working through their marriage, she even tells him that. She tells him that she would rather have the 85% than the rush. And Cooper retaliates by saying, why can't you have both? Why can't you have both contentment and passion with your partner? Instead of trying to resolve her issues with Cooper, Billy continuously runs back to Brad, trying to chase after a high that just doesn't exist anymore. And I guess this is the main point that I want to get to. I really hate the way the show depicts women. Every single woman in the show is either single or in a relationship but unhappy. All the women who are married and with kids are either unhappy or portrayed as being silly for telling themselves that they're happy in their situation. And there's definitely like this feeling, this vibe in the show where if you somehow manage to get yourself sucked into American suburbia, you're doomed. You're just trapped in this family dynamic that is oppressive and kills all passion and joy in life. And while I am not an expert and I have not lived that lifestyle for very long, I will say that that's just extremely unrealistic and disrespectful to how much work goes into building a family and relationships. I just completely disagree with how women are portrayed as having to sacrifice parts of themselves so that they can serve their families. It's as if women are doomed to be incomplete and unhappy in order to fulfill their societal roles in life. If anything, it takes a lot of work, it takes a lot of effort in order to have a family that is fulfilling. This is something as a woman and as a mother that you do willingly because it gives you that sense of fulfillment in life. So I guess in the show, even though Billy is trying to tell herself that she's happy to be a mother, she's happy to be a wife, the truth is she's not. The problem here is the show is kind of glorifying infidelity and selfishness under the guise of some kind of feminist agenda. I watched one interview about the actress playing Billy talking about the ending where she runs back to Brad, and she was trying to defend her character in a way that I felt like she was just trying too hard. She was saying that, Billy as a woman deserves to have both the 85 and the 15%. However, the way she goes about it is just really wrong. In the show, they're making it seem like, oh, it's okay for her to keep Cooper, but also run to Brad to have a fun time. That's just not how it works. I don't think it's connected, dude.
No.
Can you connect headphones, babe? Oh, headphones, babe. Spoiler-free review, take 1. Can you please put your phone on silent?
It was pairing.
Wraps things up for the Netflix summary.
That was terrible. Do over.
Babe, stop! You're gonna make this.
You paused too.
This is gonna make this way longer than 30 minutes.
You paused too long.
Shh. Okay, so that wraps things up. Now let's move on to the spoiler-free review. How does the book compare to the show? So without any spoilers, the stories are completely different. In B.B. Easton's biographical novel, instead of focusing on one ultimate unforgettable ex-boyfriend like Brad, the whole book is about the 4 major loves in her life, with the 4th one ending with her husband. Also, the book does not cover any of the toxic infidelity that Billy does in the show. Instead, the overarching of the book is B.B. Easton trying to modify her husband's behavior with the mind games and the gimmick of her writing in her diary for him to read. Same problem, but different solution. In the book, BB actually has 2 diaries. One diary that she intentionally wants her husband to find, and a second diary where she writes what really happened and how she really feels. So in diary 1, she basically fabricates perfect relationships with her exes to make her husband jealous and to give him specific ideas and specific behaviors that she wants. But in her diary number 2, that she hides way better, she tells us, the reader, the truth of how much of a loser and how terrible those exes actually were. I actually like the book way better than the show. I feel really bad that they had butchered B.B. Easton's novel so bad for the sake of creating an insane show about lust and desire and infidelity. In reality, if you read the book, it feels a lot more like a woman just sharing some crazy stories about her past, but it's still very grounded, very believable, and most importantly, you feel sympathetic towards BB. Actually, her husband in the book, his name is Ken in the book, even though that's still not the real name. That's just the fake name that she gave her husband. So show is Cooper, in the book it's Ken, but in the book, Cooper Ken is way more unlikable. She refers to him as a husbot because he's basically an unfeeling robot. And you just sympathize with her a lot more and what she goes through. And you can totally understand why she's unsatisfied with her husband. I like how the book was way more realistic. BB's exes were not perfect at all. In fact, most of them were all toxic losers. I also like the ending of the book. Unlike the show, the book ends with an actual lesson learned type of feeling, versus in the show, it's just insanity and really hard to understand or get behind. So because of that, because of everything that I've presented to you so far, I am going to give Sex Life, 44 Chapters About 4 Men by B.B. Easton, a 3 out of 5. So that wraps things up for the spoiler-free review. This is your final warning. Click away now if you don't want any spoilers or if you haven't read the book yet. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video. Bye! Spoiler time! There's not a lot to say spoiler-wise since I've already put so much into the spoiler-free discussion and I basically spoiled the whole entire Netflix show. But there are 2 main things that I want to get into. You really need to learn to communicate with your loved ones. That was my main takeaway from watching the show and reading the book. It's never okay to rely on silence or manipulation to get your way, the way Billy and BB did. And in both the show and in the book, she is very self-aware that what she's doing is unethical and toxic. So if you get anything out of this review at all, it's please don't be that kind of person who can't just communicate directly what their issues are. It just leads to so much unnecessary drama. And second thing, which is something you can only exclusively get out of the book because the show doesn't talk about it at all, it's that parents need to parent their children. So BB's wild sexual history, beginning with her losing her virginity at 15 years old, none of it would really have happened if she had had parents that actually cared about her. Her parents in the show are totally different, but in the book, she describes them as peace-loving, pot-smoking hippies, and there's nothing wrong with loving peace and being a hippie, and pot is not as illegal as it used to be. But all of those things together, plus them being so negligent, is what I have issues with. So, for example, with BB's first boyfriend, he is toxic, abusive, physically aggressive towards other, and he abuses drugs. And BB only gets into a relationship with him because he basically bullies her into it and isolates her. And the whole time this is happening, she is like trying to get out of it, but nobody comes to her defense at all because they're so scared of her first boyfriend. And in my head the whole time I was like, where the heck are her parents? Like, why can't she confide in her parents that this is happening to her at school, to the point where she's just forced into this sexual relationship with this guy that she doesn't feel safe with? And of course, shocker, he ends up cheating on her and they break up. But he still aggressively stalks her after that, and that just pushes her into her second toxic relationship with her second boyfriend, who is an older, even more degenerate person than her first, because she feels the need to run to an even worse person to feel protected from the first one. Again, where are her parents in all of this? I don't know. They're just high all the time, apparently, and they just don't care. And in fact, there's a scene where Billy's mom meets boyfriend number 2, and the day that Billy's or BB's mom meets boyfriend number 2, he decides to shave his head, and she discovers for the first time that he has a tattoo of a penis, like somewhere in his scalp. And the mom is clearly upset with the boyfriend, but instead of having a serious talk with BB, she smokes a joint and decides to ignore the problem and just dismisses that BB is in a relationship with a very bad person. The most that she gets out of her mom is her mom saying, "Oh, I hope you're using protection, honey." And that's it. So it's just really awful. And also it makes sense that she has such a type, because her mother and father's dynamic models zero responsibility for a man, just zero accountability. Because while both her parents are constantly drugged all the time, her mom is the one who has a full-time job, pays the bills, and still comes home and does all of the chores. The dad just stays home all the time and doesn't really do anything. Those are the examples that BB has in life for what adults are. It's just a miracle that she has any sense of responsibility at all, because in her biography, she gets a 4.0 GPA. She gets herself through school, through college. She holds down multiple jobs, pays her own bills, has a driver's license, has her own car. So it's really a miracle and a wonder that she ends up the way she does at all. And it also makes sense why she is as toxic and as selfish as she is. But I like how the end of the book resolves her relationship with Ken, or Cooper. They actually do make a lot of progress in their relationship. They never cheat on each other, and they end up pretty happy with each other, and she does stop trying to manipulate him through a diary. So that is how the biography ends. I probably would have been perfectly fine if I had never read the book, and I would be way happier if I didn't know the show existed at all. But I do feel way better now after talking to you guys about it. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you were entertained or learned something somehow. I would stay and chat longer, but I need to go read some more books, I guess. Thank you so much for watching. If you like the way I break down books, please consider liking and subscribing. And thank you so much. I'll see you in the next video. Bye!